Saturday morning, especially in my house, was kind of a magical time.
Saturday morning was clearly kids ruled the dial.
It was a big event. It was the weekly event. It was a special day.
However, it was a time fraught with certain dangers, because if I spent too much time watching TV, my father would come in and physically toss me from the room, loudly screaming,
"Go on, get some fresh air. What's the matter with you?" Watching cartoons all day.
It was cartoon prime time.
It was very, very special.
And I look forward to it more than I did any other day of the week. It was fantastic.
Superheroes have always been part of the Saturday morning landscape, and as Batman is one of the most best-known superheroes, he was a prominent part of that.
It's the bat signal. Let's go.
At that time in the 70s, you had writers like Denny O'Neil and Steve Englehart really reinventing Batman as a darker, more driven detective character in the comics. But interestingly, on television, he had gone the exact opposite way.
It's finally happened, Robin. I've gone batty.
Batman, for me, has always been the idea that here's a guy who's kind of nuts, who has found a way to deal with the pain of his early life by saying what any kid would say. It's like, I've gone through hell, so I'm going to be a superhero. And he decides to be the biggest badass out there on the street. So off he goes in his car with his gadgets and beating up guys who are just as screwed up, if not more so, than he is. Batman is in his heart a kid's response to an injustice. So I think little kids like that.
One of the things that keeps Batman going, and Superman and Wonder Woman and now Spider-Man, is they have been allowed to evolve over the years.
By the mid-1950s, the superhero genre in general is having a lot of trouble in comics.
In the 50s, Batman became kind of the Eisenhower Batman, the Republican Chamber of Commerce Batman, who was Gotham City's leading citizen, and he would walk down the day-lit streets waving to his fans. And then in the 60s, he became a comedic character.
In '64, the book was doing fairly poorly. They decided to switch editors, gave it to a man named Julie Schwartz, who had driven a lot of the great superhero revivals of that period. Julie went back to it being detective stories. Within a couple of years, the development began on the Adam West Show. That quickly became such an enormous success that it really sparked the whole camp movement. Batman sales skyrocketed.
The TV show stumbled onto a way to take rather esoteric notion of camp and make it not only acceptable, but positive for a mass audience. And the comic books, seeing the popularity of the television show, I think in a half-hearted way tried to follow.
I love the fact that it was on TV. I just loved the fact that other people knew about Batman. He wasn't so secret anymore. And any version's better than no version.
That was a great cultural phenomenon. Really hit all of America. But like most cultural phenomena, burned fairly fast. So when it was done, what do we do now?
Julie Schwartz came to me after the TV show died and said, in effect, you're the flavor of the week, and what would you like to do with Batman? So when I did accept the Batman assignment from Julie Schwartz, it was with the condition that I would not do camp. What I thought I did was simply take the character back to what Bill Finger and Bob Kane started with. The loner, the obsessed guy, killed parents, figure of the shadows and the darkness. He is a very dark character. He is not a happy man.
I think that was paramount in Denny's mind, was the idea that underneath that bat suit was one of the most capable crime fighters in history, certainly in literary history, somebody who could go toe-to-toe with Sherlock Holmes as far as having a keen deductive mind.
He is the Dark Knight, dark, brooding character.
He's in the dark. He's much more of a detective. He's much more sort of anxiety-ridden and morose a fellow.
Here you have a guy who looks evil and kind of exerts that pull, and yet at the end of the day, he's on your side. You may not like to hang out with him, but you'd sure as hell want him around if you were in any kind of trouble.
Fans loved Denny O'Neil because he really understood the character and explored what made Batman Batman.
In '77, Filmation produced their new take on Batman, which at the time was a fairly child-friendly version of the character.
Time to stop this foolishness.
The New Adventures of Batman came at a time when there hadn't been a great deal of entertainment based on the property for some years. The last, of course, being the Batman series in the mid-'60s with Adam West and Burt Ward. Now we're 10 years later, there's been no new material, but yet there was a pent-up demand for the character. Lou Scheimer was able to sell a show based on the earlier series that would address the needs and the demand that was in the marketplace at the time in the mid-'70s.
At the time that Batman was on CBS, The New Adventures of Batman, he was also part of the Super Friends, which was on ABC by Hanna-Barbera. So in cartoon history, this is the first time that a character has been on two different shows on two different networks at the same year. And Batman was popular enough to be on both.
You know, one of the best elements visually of the Batman show was the title cards or the interstitial cards, because you know, you'd be watching the episode and then they would go to an act break and there would be this great title card which would show Batman by himself standing up on top of a building with his cape swirling behind him, and as a kid I'd watch that and go, yeah, that looks good. Why aren't they doing that version of Batman?
The real purists like him looking like a vampire with tons of thought balloons because he has nobody to talk to, you know, wandering around these gothic castles and so forth. And that's a legitimate version of it too.
We used the lighter tone, obviously. I mean, the darker tone was just the whole concept of the character.
Look, the bat signal. To the bat cave, Dick.
I think the attempt in New Adventures of Batman was to do a more stylized version of the sort of Bob Kane, Dick Sprang look of Batman from the 40s and 50s. I think one of the things that probably influenced the Filmation team was, what would Bob Kane do if he was animating his own characters?
Bob Kane, he came out once, but he had nothing really much to say about the show. It was odd. I thought he'd get much more involved, but I mean, I didn't know what he was, what he was chewing. It was, I mean, he was very dark and gloomy. He could have been Batman.